in Arizona and Wisconsin. This is a relatively recent invention, this idea that state government should force you to have an ultrasound, essentially as the price of having an abortion, even if you and your doctor do not want you to have an ultrasound. It's a relatively recent idea, but since the idea took hold, Republicans have been pushing it all over the country. And the push for these laws happened all at once, all over the country, not because Republican governors and legislatures all got the same idea all at once, but because of model legislation. A group called Americans United for Life, it's a big, well-funded anti-abortion group, they published a model bill, a template essentially for state legislatures on ultrasounds. The Sunlight Foundation did an analysis of more than a dozen Republican-controlled states where they moved ultrasound legislation. And they found overlapping language that seemed to indicate that all of these bills were derived from the Americans United for Life model bill on forcing women to have ultrasounds. Model legislation is something that a lot of different groups do on the left and on the right. There's nothing scandalous about that as a tactic in and of itself. What's remarkable about the forced ultrasound stuff is that Americans United for Life have been so successful with it, even though the Republican Party is ever and always trying to bill itself as a small government party, right? The Freedom Party, the party that leaves you alone, except for the ultrasound wand that they insist must be Never mind. Doesn't matter if you say no, doesn't matter if your doctor says no. Small government Republicans are mandating that it be done to you and that you pay for it. It is ideologically awkward, right? Which makes the widespread success of that model legislation all the more remarkable. And now we know what is next from this remarkably successful group. The vice president of operations from Americans United for Life, the guy who was there actually running the operations of that group during the time that they published their model legislation on forced ultrasounds, the guy who saw it taken up by Republican legislators across the country, saw it moved as legislation in more than a dozen states and signed into law all over the place, even in places where it was blocked by the courts because it simply seemed really blatantly illegal. The guy who was in charge of that success for Americans United for Life, the guy who was in charge of actually running the day-to-day operations of Americans United for Life during that forced ultrasound heyday, now has a new job. Now he is running the day-to-day operations for this group, which launched a